Hello and welcome to the Delphi Economic Forum. My name is Faye Doulgkeri and I'm a journalist, and today I will try with our distinguished guest to bring light to China's new role in this world, or to be more precise, to what China wants this role to be. With us today is Dr. Henry Huiyao Wang. I hope I got that right.
Correct.
He's the founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization. This is a very influential internationally think tank. Welcome to Delphi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us today. For me, it's a great honor to speak to you. I have been following your presentations and analysis for China's new role in this changed world after the pandemic. Reading about the Center for China and Globalization, I realized that your main goal is for the center to be something like a bridge between the East and the West. How do you see the role of China in this world?
Thank you, Faye. It's excellent we have this forum, and I enjoyed our last panel very much, and I thank Ambassador Xiao here also with all the audience here. Absolutely, you mentioned about this China role. I would say, China now is actually more actively engaged with globalization, inclusive globalization. China actually, for the last 4 decades, 45 years, as the ambassador mentioned, we have lifted 800 million people out of poverty. That's a huge contribution, which means 70% of reduction of the global poverty at the same time, which fulfilled the SDG #1 objective ahead of schedule, a decade of schedule. So, furthermore, I think as China rises, there's a lot more, the world gets more attention, and there's a lot of misunderstanding, mistrust. So we found Center for China and Globalization, which is one of the top 100 ranking think tanks in the world. We become more busy now to engage and to dialogue, to communicate, but also to really clarify some of the misunderstandings, or maybe to better to explain what's going on in China, and of course to engage with the world, to dialogue, and to build a platform to the world. Like Delphi Forum is excellent forum, and we hope to do something similar. I would like to invite Delphi President to visit China and attend our forum as well.
Which misunderstandings are you referring to?
Well, there's quite a lot. For example, because recently, for example, there's a talk about overcapacity, of China, because that's probably one of the misunderstandings. I find it now substantiated. For example, China, even for its EV cars and things like that, just China in the past did not produce so many EV cars. Certainly, China become the largest EV car producer. People think, oh, China's EV car is going to flood the world now, or we're going to, overcapacity, which is not true, because, for example, the EV car produced in China, Tesla produced half its EV car in China. It's export. It's a U.S. company, and we have a German company, Daimler, BMW, Volkswagen. They all produce EV cars, starting to produce even American company like Ford and GM. So it was not just China, but also, on the other hand, the demand for those EV cars worldwide is enormous. It's far short of oversupply. It's in short of supply, because we're having this, this 2030 agenda. We have to meet the target of 1.56 degrees of the target. So. Even I was just at Munich Security Conference. I had a big conference there about climate change. We organized that, and the experts said, look, we actually, they're so costly to produce solar panels. If China can produce cheaply, that'd be great. That's really good for the mankind to combat the climate. For example, White brothers invented the airplane. We don't say, oh, because it's invented by American, we don't want to use it, want to buy it. China still buy Airbus and Boeings. Same thing. I think if things produced in China cost effective, good for the world, it's help us to combat climate change. Why not? So I think we should not use ideological and because it's produced in China, then it must be overcapacity.
I read that you are called the architect of Beijing's new diplomatic approach to the West. Which are the main features of this new diplomatic approach, and why such an approach, a new approach, was needed?
Well, I think that's probably, yeah, it's a great question. I think that because China, for example, in the past, particularly past several years, because of the COVID, that was actually locked down for several years. There's a lot of people cannot come, and that probably caused some misunderstanding, for example. And of course, because of, I think since Trump administration started 2017, they have a strategic report which placed China as a rivalry number one. So we had the trade war, we had the tariff war, and then that continues to Biden. We have tech war, we had the chip war, we had all those things going on. So I think China is what it's doing now is pursuing a more people-to-people exchanges. For example, China first would like to stabilize the relationship with the U.S., which we have seen a number of ministers visit, secretary visit recently. Yellen was in Beijing last week, and I was particularly impressed that the minister, secretary, or senior official look after the market. They had the China, EU, US. Just recently had a deputy minister meeting in Hangzhou between China, EU, and the US on food security, which is great. So I think China is now doing a lot of diplomatic initiatives. And of course, the other thing I think China is doing is that instead of using all those overemphasize on the security, in pan-security, for example, US is busy, NATO expanded, Five Eyes strengthened, AUKUS built up, and now they want to get Japan into the AUKUS. I saw Japanese Prime Minister in Washington yesterday. So and then they have a Quad, which you got India there, Japan is there, and then they have Camp David. You have South Korea, Japan, US again. So they're circulating. Now they even have a Philippines now into the circle. So I think that is not the right approach, because we need to really continue to pursue the economic globalization. What China is doing now, for example, China is pursuing the AIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, to do the biggest, infrastructure plan in the world. And India is the largest recipient of AIB loans. And China is down the Belt and Road. And we have a good example of a port here in Athens. China is really helped on this route to Europe. And China is doing on the RCEP to become the largest free trade agreement in ASEAN and China and Japan and Korea, Australia. And then also China wants to join CPTPP, which is also was designed by the US. But of course, on top of that, China is having China African Summit, China Latin American Summit, China ASEAN, China Central Asia, China Arab. It's all economic centric. So that's why you see the BRICS country doubled last year from 5 to 10 now, because China is trying to pursue globalization of economy. That's very attractive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think those are the new moves and new policy China is pursuing, more stable alliation of the world. And of course, China doesn't want to see the world really get more disrupted by this high fences, small yard, and sanction each other.
Apart from the economic diplomacy, though, we have been seeing China the last few months trying to take up a role as a mediator, for example, in the Middle East.
Yes.
What is China trying to achieve there, and what is China's approach to the Middle East?
Well, I think this is really great. I mean, I was really sad to see now the world is everywhere is driving up the military budget. We're talking about EU country, not only 2%, NATO country, not only 2%, sometimes say 3%, even 4%. That's a huge cost to the livelihood of the ordinary people, because we don't want to hold the city taxpayer money go into the military budget. Mm-hmm. We don't want to drive up the worldwide military budget, which is more dangerous. So what China is doing for both Ukraine and Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, China wants to be a great promoter of the peace, and sometimes even mediator if necessary. China set up an envoy, for both Ukraine and the Middle East, and I think that is very important. Particularly, China have done this with the Saudis and, of course, Iranians, which is a surprise to everybody. But because I think the reason for China to do that because is that China has no historical baggages. China is the largest trading partner of both Saudis and Iran, and actually China is the largest trading partner of all the Gulf countries, second largest of Israel. So China has this enormous goodwill. And so if China wants to come in and say, look, guys, don't fight, and also they're tired of their fighting, they would actually love to jump on the bandwagon of China to calm down. So I think China has an enormous soft power because they have no historical baggage, they have never colonized any places, they have never sent soldier anywhere, they have never invaded any countries in the region. It's really, it's an economic superpower. And then people would love to have China to come in, to be a guarantor, to be a mediator, to be a peacemaker, and then they just do it. I think China has enormous potential to do that.
One of the reasons, though, that the military budgets in Europe are rising right now is the war in Ukraine as well.
Yeah.
And China's position in this war has caused a lot of concern. You said Janet Yellen was in China last week.
Yeah.
She said that there will be significant consequences for China if its companies support Russia's war against Ukraine. And Secretary Blinken last week from Brussels said that China continues to provide materials to support Russia's defense industrial base.
Yeah, absolutely. I think China's position on Ukraine is very clear. I remember when I was at the Munich Security Conference 2 years ago when the war broke out, Foreign Minister Wang already said, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine is absolutely upheld. It's respected. And I actually, when the war broke out, I published an op-ed in the New York Times saying China could be more actively involved as a mediator. And 12 months later, China's government published a 12-point position paper on how to approach this conflict. And President Xi actually, called President Zelensky, and when Olaf Scholz last time in Beijing, President Xi said no nuclear war should be fought in Ukraine, and I know Olaf Scholz is coming again next few days. So I think China is now supporting. China has never provided weapons. If just imagine China, if China like U.S. and NATO provide weapons to Russia, Russia probably would take over Ukraine already, because China did not provide any weapons. And normal trade, of course, China is doing normal trade with every country, and also you have to know China has 4,000 kilometers borders with Russia, the longest in the world. We have to be safe with Russia. Historically, Russia also has a problem with China. So we want to keep a good relation with every country. And absolutely, China's position on Ukraine is very useful. I don't think China can be 100% position of West or NATO. China reserve a little space there. So when time comes, we need China to come in, to mediate, to exercise influence. China can pick the phone to talk both sides. Because I had a Ukrainian ambassador come into my office just a few weeks ago, and he said, "Okay, we are doing things, but I know that if we don't get support, we're going to develop nuclear bombs." That was a surprise to me. I mean, it's very, very dangerous now.
So let's make it clear: how would China like to see the end of the world of the war in Ukraine?
No, I think,
sorry for interrupting.
Sure.
In Europe, we have very, very clear positions.
Yeah.
We want Ukraine to keep its territorial integrity and Russia out of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
What is the exact position of China?
No, I think China would certainly be interested in looking at proposals from both sides and trying its best to see how we can compromise on both sides. Probably we have to be realistic. I think now we see the fatigue of both sides, fighting this war, and we see U.S. is reluctant to continue to support the war, even for now, So at some point of time, we don't want to have another Afghanistan for 20 years, right? I mean, otherwise Europe will be disrupted forever. We want to see the end of this war peacefully and satisfactory to every parties. So that's what China talk about overall security structure. We have to think about the roots of the problem. Where are the roots of the problem? We have to address those key issues. Otherwise, I mean, there constantly could have further conflicts.
So let's discuss a little bit, because I see our time is running out, about China-US relationship. You recently published a very interesting book called Escaping Thucydides' Trap.
Yes.
Here in Greece, we are very familiar, of course, with Thucydides.
That's right. Yeah.
But let me explain the term for those that are not familiar with the term. It is mainly used to describe an apparent tendency towards war when an emerging power threatens to displace an existing great power. Do you think it is possible to escape this trap? In other words, do you think in the long run it will be possible to avoid a conflict between the US and China?
Absolutely. I really think so, because and I had a Professor Graham Allison coming to my office about 2 weeks ago. We jointly launched this new book, Escaping the Thucydides Trap. I mean, he had a first book about Destined for War. Can we escape Thucydides? But now this time we said we can. The reason for that, he actually said, you know, look, you know, China, US is like conjoined twins, linked twins. So if one trying to, you know, fight the other will be destroyed or be greatly damaged. So we are in the same boat. And then we are in the 21st century. We are all, you know, intertwined so much. So we cannot really fight each other. So the only way out of this is to really peacefully, because there's also MAD, you know, mass, you know, assured destruction. You know, so I think that it's important. The largest economy of the world, U.S. and China, has to talk and has to work together. So I think, you know, we have to find some, you know, guidelines and guardrails and trying to stabilize the relation. We are going to compete, of course, but we're not going to have a fight. I don't think that is good for the world. And so that's why I think, you know, now we see a parade of a senior official coming.
Yes, you have been engaged in dialogue lately. Is this going well? I mean, is it fruitful? Do we have any concrete results out of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, because for all the senior people at dialogue, nobody wants decouple. Nobody wants a Cold War, and nobody wants to really have a fight. So that's going to trickle down to the both policymakers, to the both governments, to say, okay, let's avoid that. Let's be rational. Let's talk about it. So I think this is great. I mean, so we need a new narrative for the 21st century. We cannot live in a Cold War mentality. We have to upgrade. And so the 21st century reality, you know, we're so much linked with each other. The trade has several hundred times than the Second World War now. We are all in the same constant changing world. We're super connected by the internet. So can't have a fight. The war is in your living room these days. You just can't watch what's happening in Gaza and not to say anything about that. So I think, you know, it's difficult now. With the 21st century, you know, all kind of reality, we have to find a way to live together and escape Thucydides' trap here in Greece.
Dr. Wang, thank you very much for this discussion. Thank you all for watching us, and thanks to Delphi Economic Forum for having us today. Thank you.
Thank you.